Okay. Well, what's up, everybody? Unrested here. It's time to start Facebook JFAQ. Let's see, I think I have, from what I read at the beginning, there's 46 questions. So if I give each question only a couple minutes, it's still going to be close to an hour. Sorry if you don't like long videos, but that's your warning at the beginning. Turn it off now. No one's holding a gun to your head. You can change the YouTube channel. Let's begin with Jay. He says, top 3 Japanese books and top 3 Japanese authors. Let's see. There is obviously Murakami, who everybody would probably put at the top of their list. Amazing writer. If you haven't read any of his stuff like Norwegian Wood, 1Q84, amazing stuff. I mean, the guy's super talented. Probably my next on the list would be Inagawa. Inagawa writes a lot of, he writes manga too, but he also writes books about his supernatural experiences. Are they real? Are any of his stories true? Probably not. But he writes some really amazing urban legends in what would be considered creepypasta here in Japan. Well, not here in Japan, back in the States. And I just really love his take on stuff and how creepy he can write. So he's got a good imagination. I'll put it that way. And I can't remember her name right now. This sucks. But the woman who wrote the book that became the movie, Confessions, she has another book, and I just talked about this in my last video, where it's about 4 girls. One of them is attacked by a child molester, and they watch her die from that. And it shows, the story is actually 4 different stories connected together of how each of these women grow up. And for the life of me, I forget the title of this movie both in English and Japanese all the time. I don't know why. If someone can recall what the name of that other movie is, it just recently came out in a film form. I read the book first. It was awesome. I think you'd be able to find it probably translated in America. I know I found it here in a shop, so most of the stuff that I can find translated here, you can find in America. All right, let's move on to Tyler. Tyler's got quite a few questions I can already see here, but hey, guess what? That's okay. As long as your questions do not repeat other ones within the list of questions or something that has been asked a million times, or perchance asks if you can become a doctor here in Japan with knowing 0 Japanese, then it's okay. Your questions are okay. Tyler says, what kind of food is most popular in Japan besides Japanese food, Indian food, Italian food, and Korean food? Well, that knocks everything off, doesn't it? I'd say if you leave me with all those knocked off the list, probably French food. Almost everything about France is loved here in Japan. Tyler says, does everyone love to read in Japan? What is more popular, reading or watching TV? No comma there, so that was a bit strange. What is more popular, reading or watching TV? Probably watching TV is more popular. Almost any country, I think, watching TV is more popular due to the fact that you'll always have people who don't like to read. And usually those people still like TV, whereas the opposite is not always true. I'd say Japan, though, is overall a pretty literate country in their own language. Surprisingly, when you're on the train, you see a good amount of people always with a book open. And I don't mean an e-book or anything like that. I mean an old-school paperback book. And you see quite a few people reading. So I would say they're a pretty well-read nation. I would give them credit for that. Definitely, I think they're pretty well read. Are they knowledgeable internationally? Not so much. Tyler says, what other culture are most Japanese people interested in? Again, I'm going to refer to France. I mean, a fine example now is the next Pokemon game coming out, Pokemon XY. What is it based on? It's based on France. I know the place is called Kalos, but even that is a compliment to France. The entire city is designed like France, and Kalos is the Greek god of beauty, if I'm correct, and that's a compliment to how they feel about France. They feel it's beautiful. I think that says it all. And, there's tons of other stuff here in Japan that wraps around France. There's shops with all kinds of bad French written on it and stuff like that, because they mess up other language just as much as they mess up English. Jason says, is burgundy ice cream popular in Japan? Jason, no. Okay, that's super specific. Like, I've said with cereals in the past, you've got Frosted Flakes, chocolate flakes, and maybe if you're lucky, you've got corn flakes, and that's the variety of cereal you have here. Same goes for ice cream. I mean, we've got Baskin Robbins, and sometimes they get a little wacky, but if you're looking for specific flavors of stuff, you're more than likely not going to find it here in Japan. U.S. American comic books, are they popular? No, they're not popular here in Japan. Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, yes, popular. All those movies came out here. People actually really like Harry Potter, for sure. Are the conventions specifically dedicated... Are there conventions specifically dedicated to U.S. American fiction? Nope. Or is the American fiction Star Wars just dispersed in the regular cons? That's written very strange, but I think I understand what you're trying to say. Yeah, there is Star Wars themed stuff at conventions here, but it's not as popular as their own indigenous science fiction. Let's put it that way. Okay, let's move on. That was a bit difficult to read through. Devin says, hey, Unrested, you mentioned briefly in a JFAQ that you met your wife in a library, if I recall. It was a bookstore, but that's close. They both have a lot of books, right? In Japan, I was wondering where there is to meet decent girls. I think the rule is the same almost anywhere. Go to a decent place and you'll meet decent women. I mean, same goes for men, guys. It's true. All right? What advice would you give someone who's into the arts that's looking for a nice girl in Japan? Well, you can go to subtle and low-key art and gallery shows at cafes and bars in your area. The good thing about Japan is almost every cafe and bar has a theme. Check out the theme. Is the theme something you're into? For example, if you're really into maybe like naturalism and kind of like a hippie feel, like a really granola type cafe, that's the type of girl you're probably going to meet there. Now, if you're into like, deathcore and metal and stuff, go to a bar like that and you're going to start to meet those kind of girls. It's pretty easy. You can right away tell what kind of theme a bar is into just from the outside alone. Franco says, is it true that in Japan streets are not named and there aren't any street signs? This is true. The only streets that are really named are like major highways and stuff like that. Like Midasuchi Street is the only one I can think of in my area. That's the closest one. And that's like 2 or 3 stops down on the train. How do you get by? Well, you use a lot of landmarks. Let me tell you, Japan is the landmark place, man. You get by with GPS on your iPhone. People love to use that here. Almost every car has a GPS system. And literally, if you have to still get directions by people describing it to you, they will describe landmarks. They can't name any streets. I mean, it's a bit ridiculous. I don't know. Japan could definitely use some street names. All right. Tyler says, I have noticed in videos streets in Japan are very narrow and small. Does Japan have any big highways or big streets? No, everything is super tiny. If you want to get to Tokyo, you have to take a 1-lane street. Well, yeah, of course we've got highways, dude. Come on, man. You couldn't Google highways in Japan and look up some images? Come on, go do that right now. Find some pictures of highways in Japan. We have major highways here too. Tyler says, does everyone have access to healthcare no matter what class you are, poor, rich, or middle class? Yeah, I mean, for the most part. The only reason you wouldn't have access is if you weren't a nationalized citizen or didn't have a visa that allowed you to use it. For example, I don't know if you can use national health insurance on a tourist visa. You might not be able to. I think you'd probably have to use international insurance. Otherwise, especially if you work here, you're covered by national health insurance. That doesn't make healthcare free. It doesn't make it free, but it makes it so low cost that you're not going to worry too much about out-of-pocket costs. And prescriptions, unlike America, for example, are not insane. And almost always you can pick up your prescription at the clinic or hospital you went to. And it's included in the cost of how much it was to come to that place. It's super reasonable. As an American, it feels like free to me. Like, I mean, I can't believe how incredibly cheap it is. I take my kid to the child's clinic when he gets sick. It's never been more than $5, and that includes the medicine that he gets. So that's an example. Okay, who's next on the list here? It is Peiji Kori. He's written it in katakana, so I've read it in katakana. Do you know if Gaijin Pot's social network is a good website to meet a pen pal or a language partner? Not really, because Gaijin Pot tends to only have Gaijin on it. Well, maybe if you want to meet a partner who is a foreigner in Japan. If not, can you recommend me a website to meet some Japanese friends? You can meet them on Facebook. I mean, Japanese people use Facebook. Just look up some Japanese names. And I bet you, Facebook doesn't have any groups to meet Japanese people? I don't know. I've never tried to do it. I meet Japanese people by walking outside of my house. Definitely, man. Use Facebook. A lot of Japanese people use Facebook these days. They have their own social networking site called Mixi, but you can't use that unless you live in Japan. Sergio says, okay, in the US they have country music here. In Mexico they have ranchera. I hope I pronounced that right. What is the equivalent? Sorry for the horrible spelling. In Japan. I've already talked about this, haven't I? Inca. Inca music is Japanese country music. It's that stuff where you go, I did it before. I just did that, didn't I? I remember hitting my neck. Brenton says, if you are an average American citizen with little education, is there any hope of living in Japan? How little of education are we talking about? Like, did you finish high school? You need to finish college probably if you're going to come work here and get a work visa. Teaching English required a lot of college work. If someone is interested in becoming an expat, how does one go about it, specifically for the Japanese nation? Well, I mean, if you don't have a college degree, you have other ways I guess you could work here. One of the unfortunate things is you can't get a working holiday visa. America does not have that in Japan. You could marry a Japanese person and get a spouse visa, but I don't recommend that unless you really love the person, because that's really using a system. Your other chances are you need to get a degree. Most places aren't going to approve a work visa unless you have a degree. There's not a lot around that. I know people are probably going to write and be like, that's not true. You can go there and work at a bar or a restaurant. And they're talking about a working holiday visa, and they don't understand that America doesn't have a working holiday visa. Okay? As far as being an average American citizen, I imagine that I'm just an average American citizen. I don't really see myself as anything more or less than that. So I don't think you need to worry about being above average. There's a lot of below average people here, I assure you. Yeah, sorry, man. I don't really know a way around, having a college degree. Everyone I know here has a college degree to get their job. Now I'm not using a work visa because I'm on a spouse visa, but that's because I started on a work visa and transferred over once I got married. Sorry, man. Wish I had another answer for you. Tyler says, how many hours is a school day in Japan, and how many school days are in a year? Oh, that's a good question. Gosh, you know what? There's a lot more school days in a year here than there is in America. For example, we only get, for a break in between the school years changing for the kids, there's only 3 weeks off in winter, and then the school year changes, they go to the next level. And they get all the normal holidays like Oban and Golden Week, of course, so that's 2 more weeks. And then you've got a summer break that I think is about a little over 1 month. I want to say 4 weeks total, so about a month. So subtract all that from a year with the weekends included, but only Sundays, because sometimes they come on Saturdays, and I have no idea how many number of days that comes out to, so that's your answer. What a very crap answer, sorry. How many hours is a school day? I think I can definitely answer that because I've worked at a school that's a public school. Okay, so let's see. I got there at 8. School started at 8:30. The day ended for the kids at 2:30. That's when the bell rang for them to go home. I don't know. Some stay for clubs. Is that considered their school day is still going? I don't think so. I guess the actual learning stops at 2:30. So from 8:30 to 2:30 is a school day. Now the teachers, oh my God, those poor people stay there till like 7, 8, maybe even later. Their school day just never ends. I feel sorry for teachers in Japan. Kawaiso sensei. All right, let's see who's next here. Brittany says, do you think there are more chikan, if you guys don't know what a chikan is, that's a pervert, in Osaka or Tokyo? Well, I mean, that's... Probably if you ask Osaka people, they'd say Tokyo, and if you ask Tokyo people, they'd say, definitely Osaka, you chikans. Let's see. I don't have any research on this. Like, I don't, have facts or statistics in front of me right now. I would say probably due to the larger population in Tokyo, they have more, but I would say if we take aside population size and just say per capita, probably Osaka. Osaka's kind of creepy sometimes. Victor says, hey Scott, here's my question. I heard that every tattoo shop in Japan has to tattoo Yakuza. Is that true? That's not true, Victor. There's a little bit of truth to this. This is what I've been told by my friend who is a tattoo artist here in Japan. Now, is his story 100% legit? I don't know. I'm just taking the knowledge that I have from the stories he's told me. Apparently, if you're in the big-time city-type areas where Yakuza clans own a section of the area that you're in, if you open a shop in their area, it's okay, but they need to approve it, and they're supposedly, like, top guys can acquire appointments at any time they want. And I've heard from him that they can just call it, like, midnight and be like, can you finish up my tattoo? And you gotta come over and finish it. But what I've also heard is that some tattoo artists who open more so in the country, like a guy I know who's out in Nara, which is very countryside area, they don't have any kind of control over that and don't even try to regulate that. So he has no connection. He can't ever be bothered by them, and they can't just like wander into his shop and demand a tattoo or anything like that. So that's what I've heard. Is it 100% true? I don't know. I don't have any factual evidence to back any of that up. That's just what I've heard. Through the grapevine. Take it for what it is. Okay, what's next? Crystal says, number 1, do you keep up with the anime? Oh, she says, sorry. I should say this first. Crystal says, random Pokemon related questions. Number 1, do you keep up with the anime in Japan? The Pokemon anime? Yes and no. I've watched some of them off and on sporadically when I've had the time. And I know that new movie's coming out soon with that new guy, Gene something or other. Am I going to see it? Maybe if my kid really goes crazy to see it, I'll take him to go see it. Number 2, are Pokemon centers in Japan as awesome as I imagine them to be? Yes, I have to confirm that this is true. You find stuff there that you're like, what? I didn't even know they made this. Action figures of Team Rocket and Nurse Joy and stuff. They cost a lot. They're not cheap. They're collector's items now, even in Japan. More serious question. I'm possibly going to be living there in the next few years, and I worry about accessibility of medication. I heard that some meds, which are legal in the US, are not in Japan. So, I was wondering, how difficult would it be for me to get medication or treatment that I'd need? Well, what do you need, dude? I don't, there are some that are hard to get. That's true, you're right. But is your medication one of them? I don't know, because you didn't tell me what the problem is or what the medication is. Okay, look, from what I know, the medications I know are a little bit hard to gain access to are, number 1, painkillers are really hard to gain access to. Number 1, because Japanese people in general are smaller, lighter, way less. They don't need the heavy medication that we use in America, and most times that stuff's just too strong. Hydrocodone or whatever, all these different painkillers. What is it, Oxycontin? You're probably not going to ever get that in Japan unless you're, I don't know, dying of the most painful disease ever. On top of that, I've heard, now this is what I've heard, again, this is going to be stories from friends, so feel free to correct me if someone here has more knowledge, because some of you do live in Japan with me that watch my videos. I appreciate all the help you give me. Blood pressure medication, from what I've heard from a friend who actually needed it here, he went to the doctor and he said what he needed due to stress, and the doctor just laughed and said, hey, we all have stress, I can't prescribe it just for that. So he said it was a little bit hard for him to get that. He had to go to multiple doctors before someone would finally prescribe it. So that might be some problems you run into. I will say, in general, a lot of doctors in Japan try not to over-medicate. They're really kind of, I don't want to say stingy, maybe they go light on medication, okay? And sometimes I really feel like a trip to the doctor doesn't really do much. Like one time I had a serious sore throat to the point where like I couldn't swallow stuff, like I couldn't eat. And I didn't get any painkillers at all. Like they gave me some lozenges and that kind of sucked. I eventually went to the store, and strangely enough, Japanese drugstores have some pretty powerful, I guess, what would I call it, like painkillers. And you can buy some stuff that will numb your throat if nothing else. And it allowed me to eat once more and teach lessons in Japan because my whole voice revolves around my throat, which I need to use back when I used to teach. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Tyler again. Do most people drive to their destination or take a train? I've kind of already answered this. Train in the city, car in the countryside. It's just like any other country that has public transportation like that. Tyler says, how fast is the internet in Japan? I don't know exactly how fast it is, but it's pretty darn fast. Is it a lot faster than you would expect in the US? Yeah, it's definitely faster than what you expect in the US. It's not even comparable. South Korea, and no, not North Korea, for those idiots out there who are like, which Korea are you talking about? The one that has internet. South Korea and Japan are known for having very high-speed internet, and that's very, very true, definitely. Brendan says, what's your favorite Shinto shrine that you visited? Shitenoji is one of my favorite. Yeah, it's really close to me. I know you visited Hokoku and the shrine at the Ibisu Festival, among others. Which did you enjoy the most? Yeah, Shitenoji is probably one of my favorite. Thank you for taking the time to make your videos. No problem. Tyler again. Have you ever been to a capsule hotel? Uh-oh. Is my son in the background there? Can you see him? What's up? Anpan Man. Oh, did your Anpan Man stop? Okay, I'll go get it. Hold on. I gotta start up Anpan Man again. Okay, sorry, where were we? Have you ever been to a capsule hotel? No, I've never been to one, actually. I've just never had a reason to go. Either I lived in my apartment or went to a normal hotel when I traveled to another area. Patrick says there are obviously a lot of cultural differences between Japan and the West, but are there any that you have had a really hard time conforming to? For example, I don't know how well I'd do if I were socially obligated to work until the wee hours in the morning like some businessmen do. That's not common that a gaijin would actually have to do that, especially if you're in teaching. That doesn't happen that much, but I guess if you do work at a Japanese corporation, that could happen. One of the harder things I've found is not speaking my mind. In a work situation where there is some kind of either incompatibility or you see somebody not pulling their own weight, it's not really common in Japan to suddenly speak up and, call that person out. And that would actually be frowned upon. If somebody's going to do it, it needs to be their higher up. You can't be the person that would call attention to that. And I've found that that's a little bit hard for me because I've definitely worked at places where I feel like the other person that I'm working with or people that I'm working with don't pull their own weight for how much work they should be doing. And either you end up having to do more work yourself or you quit. And most times I've just quit. I'm not going to put up with that. Let's see. What's next? Jeremy says, hey, Skiat, while living in the mostly ethnical and linguistical homogeneous country of Japan, how much of your anxiety or uncertainty regarding day-to-day life, working life, home life, even things like finding a place to live or see a doctor has been lifted off your shoulders when you got married to your wife? It's helped a lot. Obviously I speak Japanese at this point, but there is some stuff that just gets too technical for me. For example, like very technical bank transfers or, obviously doctor technical questions. I don't know a lot of the doctor lingo in Japanese. That becomes very difficult for saying stuff in medical terms. So she's helped me out with that before. Not that I've had like a lot of medical disasters here in Japan. I'd imagine that someone would be more at ease living there knowing there was always someone to help you out, especially with the tricky parts of the language and culture when you need it most. Does your wife make it easier for you? Yeah, she definitely makes living here a ton easier for me. And, you know, of course, I always return the favor when any of her friends need, like, simple things like reserve a hotel back in America for going on a trip, or if they need it, pretty much anything done in English. Like, sometimes my sister-in-laws need letters translated to companies that she's writing to in English, and I'll do that for her. Peter Din says, have you had any favorite historical figures during the Warring States period of Japan? Yeah, of course, man. Nobunaga. Who doesn't love Nobunaga, man? Look that guy up sometime. That dude's hardcore. He was a straight pimp daddy and a cold-blooded killer. Oh, you've got it in here. It says, for example, Nobunaga. Yeah, dude. Hideyoshi. Yeah, of course, man. And Hattori Hanzo. Of course, you guys probably know about him from Kill Bill, right? Dude, Nobunaga is the best, man. If you don't know who Nobunaga is, you need to read about that guy right now. Dude is badass, man. Sucks how he died, though, right? Look up how he died, and you'll be like, what? Oh, no, he didn't. Hayden was like, sorry if this has been answered in another JFAQ, but I have heard that connecting wirelessly with random people is a lot more popular in Japan. Yes, it is. Like meeting people on Pokemon or the Street Pass function on the 3DS, because I have noticed some of those things are near useless in the Western world. Really? That sucks. You know, I didn't buy a DS till I got to Japan, so I didn't even use any of that stuff when I was in America. And yeah, it totally, man, it's awesome. You can be on a train and just, you know, doing your global connection and, you know, trade some Pokemon with a person on a train. You might never ever see them. They might be train cars down from you and you never see them, but I've gotten a sock. If you guys know what Pokemon that is, I've traded for a really nice sock that I won at one time, and they were just stoked that they got a Pokemon they wanted with an American name, like something an American had written, because theirs is in Japanese. So they were pretty stoked, and, you know, we sent each other thank you mails, and that was it. It was cool. Alright, what's next? Tyler says, I know I could look this up, but I like first-hand sources better. What is the climate like in Japan? In all of Japan? Come on, Tyler. Oh. Does it have all 4 seasons? Tyler, Japan spans all the way from Hokkaido down to Okinawa. Those regions are totally different. Bro, you need to look up a map, man, and see where the equator's at. Okay. Japan has all 4 seasons, but obviously the most extreme north and extreme south tend to be way hotter and way colder during the whole year. It's pretty much like any country that's split over the equator. Okay, Hokkaido is the coldest part of Japan, and obviously Okinawa and the tiny islands surrounding it are the hottest. Okay, Joseph says, mention briefly about masters on my Sumie question. How do Japanese masters view Western learning this trade? For the most part, I'd say if you show that you're hardcore, a master of any art will teach you a trade as long as they're open to teaching Gaijin, which I would think most are. It's super rare that it happens, though. But I have seen Gaijin take on Japanese trades, and what I've heard from some of them is be ready to get yelled at. Get ready to be pushed to your limits, and get ready to get tested like you won't believe. Because, and they have a really good reason why they're doing this, because at any moment you could give up and go all the way back to America or whatever country you're from because you are not a citizen in that country, and they have just wasted all their time teaching somebody. And I'm sure it has probably happened to them where they've had people give up, all right? And I'm saying not just Gaijin, I'm saying they've had Japanese people give up. It happens. You know, even they don't ganbatte all the time. So that's what I've heard. If you do decide to come here and take on a master and say that you want to be an apprentice, first, be ready that you're probably going to be rejected a few times before they even accept your apprenticeship. They might be like, what the hell is this shit? Get it out of my face. They might tear up your paper and throw it away and say, I don't want to see your crap. You got to come back. You got to crawl back, man. You got to crawl back on your knees and beg again. This person has given up their whole life for their art, for their craft. They are a master for a reason, and they are badass. They can say anything they want to you, treat you however you want. That's how the master apprenticeship or senpai-kohai relationship works with these very, very beautiful and classic trades. Good question. Let's move on, dude. Daniel's next. He says, English is not my first language, but here I go. That's okay. Bowing is the most prevalent greeting in Japan, but how common is handshaking? Do friends have a kind of more informal handshaking? Japanese people do not have their own formal handshaking at all. What about young gang members? Do they bow to each other? Yes, they do. Or do they have a unique handshake that represents them as a group? No, they bow to each other. They would still bow to each other. Yakuza still bow to each other. They're not like, pounds, dude, you know, like... Bowing will always be the most formal way to approach anyone in Japan. There is no secret handshakes or anything like that. They will give handshakes to, obviously, gaijin sometimes, but I have found when it tends to be people who are a bit up there in age and are salarymen and have never traveled outside of the country, they tend to be a little bit awkward when they give a handshake. I guess just kind of like us gaijin when we first get here and try to do our first couple of bows and probably look a little awkward ourselves. Anyway, moving on, Kyle says, I was wondering if they have Facebook in Japan. Yes. Have you never tried to check that? I think you can check that from any country. If so, how popular is it? Okay, let me give you a little bit of history. The first real big networking site, obviously we had Nichan, which was more of a bulletin board site, but there was Mixi after that, and Mixi is kind of like a Facebook version in Japan, but you need to live in Japan and have a Japanese phone number and cell phone to be able to use it. And that kind of really limited anybody who could join it and kind of actually setting that company on a bankruptcy. And they're going to be probably gone in the next 2 years, most people on the Jazz Deck predict. As for Facebook, it gained popularity over Mixi, but it's not the most popular anymore here. Line, which is actually an instant messenger based on cell phone apps, is one of the most popular now. It's an instant messenger, but it's also a networking site, kind of like it has its own wall, like Facebook. And from what I've read about in tech news in Japanese newspapers, that is actually the most popular thing here. The Japanese say they tend to not like Facebook because always the style keeps changing constantly, and they said sometimes it's hard to see people's status updates and stuff like that. I don't completely understand why that would be difficult, but to each their own, you know. I think they just feel more comfortable with Line. Bobby says, Ola Scott, strange question, but has there been a Japanese actor that you have swooned over? Mine would be Hiroshi Abe. Hiroshi Abe's a dude, right? Like, you know that, right? I've never swooned over. I mean, you know, that's okay. That's totally okay if you're swooning over a dude. Swing whichever way you want, play for whichever team you want to. Have I ever swooned? I mean, there's beautiful Japanese actresses out there. Look at Dan Mitsu. Couldn't get her name off my tongue. Dan Mitsu. See, I can't even say her name right. She's so beautiful. Dan Mitsu's beautiful. Who else? There's so many. Oh, man. What's her name? Hold on. This is more of a Grabia idol. Sugihara. Sugihara is a beautiful Grabia idol. I like that one. I don't know. Check those two out. See what you think. They're pretty beautiful. There's so many beautiful Japanese actresses. I don't know who to choose. Now, are they super talented? Nah, not really. None of them are very good actors. But they're beautiful. And really, that's all that matters, right, men? Boys for life! All right. Bjorn says, just visited a teppanyaki restaurant here in the UK. I was wondering if you have ever visited one in Japan, and if so, what did you think about it? Such as how they fiddle around with the knives? Fiddle around with the knives? Is that what you mean? And how they entertain people. That's more of a Western thing. I've been to quite a few teppanyaki places around here, and they do some pretty exquisite stuff with the knives and very hygienic stuff, but they're not really that into putting on a massive show. I tend to find I've only seen that really in America. And I mean, it's cool. I appreciate that, and that's pretty awesome and badass that they can do that. But I think they're more about making the food taste perfect here. Like the food is just, I mean, it melts in your mouth. It's incredible. So that's more kind of my thoughts on it. Dimitri says, hello, Scott, long-time watcher, first-time posting. I was watching a program about foreigners living in Japan, and they were discussing observations they had made. One was that there's a huge cultural gap between the elderly and the youth, in that most consumer goods are aimed at the under 30 demographic. Have you experienced this to be true? Really? I've heard kind of the opposite. I've heard that there's a lot of stuff that's, like, for example, politics are always aimed at old people. Like, everybody aims all their policies and like what they'll be changing and what they'll do to help Japan to old people. So that aspect I think is more towards old people. Consumer goods, I guess, you know why this would make sense that they said this, that most are for under 30? The most people in Japan with a disposable income are under 30. We've got a lot of freeders and parasite singles that are under 30 now. That means they never leave their house. They grow up. They never get married. Maybe they finish college, but they don't get a decent job, and they just live at their house forever. And they obviously can fully dispose of their income because they don't pay rent. They don't even pay for things like laundry or electricity or water or anything. I don't think they know what real life is like. So that would make sense because, I mean, if you're old and elderly, you can't work anymore, you're living on a tiny pension, how much luxury items can you buy, right? Kai says, what do you like about old Japan? Kai, this is the third time you've asked this, and I've answered you in a private message, and I've answered you in a video. Kai, give it up, dude. End this question. Dimitri says, another question, if you don't mind. Japan has a reputation in Western society for its wacky styles and subculture. But when it comes to shared subcultures like Gothic culture, which exists in Western countries, does it seem that in Japan, it's more of a look than an actual movement? Does your typical goth in Japan understand what the movement is really about? What is the movement really about? Can you teach me? Or is it just cool look and style? I say they're more focused on the style here in Japan. For example, I tend to see when people are goth or industrial or metal in America, they'll take on the lifestyle so extreme that they'll even like work jobs that connect to those themes. And in Japan, that's definitely not true. Like, you may meet a guy, he's like, yes, I'm an executive chef, and when I get off of work, goth for life. You know, it's pretty interesting. People's jobs and their style really tend not to connect a lot in Japan. Like, you'll meet a guy who's a super professional salaryman, but he loves some 50 Cent, you know, when he gets off of work. And it's pretty funny sometimes, the people you meet. Brianna says, what's the most popular instant food at a convenience store there? Like here in the US, it's instant noodles, maybe. Like something people can buy and eat fast, I guess bento boxes. You know, bento boxes? If you don't know what a bento box is, go ahead and Google bento box right now. BENTO box. Ray says, hey Scott, are you excited for MGSV, Metal Gear Solid Revengeance? Is that what that is? Or 5? I was also curious, is MGS as popular in Japan as it is in the West? Well, Japan makes it, so yeah. Also, where is the best place you would suggest traveling in Japan in order to experience traditional Japanese culture? Why don't you head out to the countryside? Why don't you go out to like Koyasan or something like that? Kyoto, but Kyoto's so full of gaijin. I'm just joking. I love other gaijin. Megan says, what is one random thing you did not expect when you came to Japan that no one would think about before moving there? Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, like, what was I like? What? Are you serious? There were a few things that I just didn't know. For example, okay, sizes of food. I didn't know, I mean, I guess I never even read about this anywhere, but everything that is an L size in America just doesn't exist in Japan. Like, that would just be called insane, crazy, no one can eat that size. Your medium size in America is considered the super XL size here for food. Same goes for drinks and kind of like clothing too. So everything was smaller. And I mean, I knew Japanese people were smaller physically, but I didn't think that affected their clothes and their food. But it really, really does. That was kind of a surprise. I wasn't used to that. It makes me feel so big and like I can eat like a big man. What's the next question? How often, this is Alex, how often do you see drunk women in the streets and in trains, for example? I know it's much more likely to see a drunk celery man. A celery man. I know he probably meant to write salary man and Apple corrected it. You know, Apple iCorrect bullshit corrected it, but it says celery man. That just cracks me up. I just imagine this celery stalk with a suit on. Sorry, I just imagine, you know. Okay. Anyway, let's get back to this. They work so hard and need some time off, but don't women get drunk as well? Yeah, women get drunk too in Japan. I'd be lying if I said no. Do they get as fall down, dumb, stupid, throw up, shit themselves drunk as salarymen? No, they don't. I mean, they do get pretty wasted, and I have seen girls like frickin' stumble. I saw one time, I remember, I was going shopping at a grocery store at 10 a.m. Okay, and this taxi stops because a girl inside looked like she about to throw up. And she tries to get out of the taxi, but just freaking, you know, eats a pavement sandwich when she tries to get out. And she is just blasted, wasted, like insanely, grossly wasted. And I was going to go over to help her, but this other guy came over first, and I thought, you know, she doesn't need a crowd, she just needs someone to help her. And she super rudely shooed this guy away. Like, she was like, yeah, 790. And like, so he was like, fuck that, you know. And honestly, I understand his feeling. You know, you're already wasted, smelling with throw up all over yourself, lady. You need all the help you can get. But she was all like, don't touch me. And so he was like, all right, dude, I tried to help. And he walked off, and I thought, well, she's going to do the same thing with a big scary gaijin with tattoos. It's not going to change because of who I am. So, and then I saw her just absolutely stumble down the street to a hotel, and I mean, she was a mess. Like, I don't think there was any helping her, aside from maybe if the cops showed up, that would be good. Hopefully somebody did that. I myself did not have my cell phone at the time, so I could not. Alright, moving on. Okay, do Japanese families have family reunions where all or most of the members get together and eat and socialize and catch up on things? No, not quite. Not like the American style one. You know, they don't have any like soul food meetups or anything like that. Lamya Sa says, what do you think about J-dramas? Some are good, some are bad. Can you share your favorites? Okay, there was Shinzamono. That was a really good one. Hey, that guy who likes Abe, you need to check out Shinzamono. That was his best by far. Recently, what was the one I just watched recently? The guy from Arashi was in it. There was one with the guy from Arashi, not Nino. The guy who's got the big teeth, you know, like he just looks like he has a mouth full of just like giant chiclets. He made this really weird show where he plays a tutor who helps kids who are in trouble at school. And he's kind of a psycho at the same time, so he plays these games with them like pawns, and it was really good drama. For the life of me, I don't know the name. I always miss the name of these shows. I never pay attention. That was really good. And there's one, God, I remember partially in English, The Maid something or other. I can't remember now. And it's about a maid. Just look up The Maid, and it's her name. I forget what her name is now. But she's a maid who every week she works at a different house, and that's how the show's story changes every week. And she is just cold, hardcore, majime, that means like super serious, about teaching people life lessons. And the way she gets into their life is she's a maid, so she can come in and be like, yeah, I'm just here to, you know, take care of your family, run your kids to school, clean your house, etc., etc. And she'll look into what the family problems are, go to that house, and then just like brutally solve them with like mindfuck logic. And For example, there was one where this girl, she's always really disobedient to her dad. He tries his best to take care of her. The mom died in a car accident. I mean, not a car accident. The mom died from drowning, and she's a total bitch to her dad. And she's just a little kid. No matter how he tries to explain it to her, she's a brat about, I want my mom. He's like, I'm sorry, I can't. Like, he's super nice. He's trying his best. This lady comes into the life, and she's like, oh, okay, you want to see your mom? Let's go see your mom. And she's like, oh, sweet, finally somebody's listening to me. So she's taking her for a walk down to the lake where her mom drowned. She's like, come on, let's go see your mom. They're walking. They get up to the lake. And she's like, yeah, where are we going? We're going to go see your mom. And she keeps going into the lake, and the lake's like up to their knees now. And she's like, no, really, like, where are we going? She's like, I'm taking you to go see your mom. And like the water's like up to their chest now. And she's like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm taking you to go see your mom. And like the water is up to their chin. Like she's got this girl about to drown. And the girl finally realizes, my mom is gone. She's not coming back. It's not my dad's fault. There's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing he can do about it. This lady finally teaches her a lesson, and the show's over. Freaking hardcore, right? And that kid needed to be taught a lesson, and this lady teaches it in the most brutal way. Maybe child services might be called if this really happened, but hey, it's TV, right? Let's move on. Let's see. Kyle says, this is an odd request, but I am learning Japanese at the moment, and one thing I've had to practice loads is writing on paper and not typing. Could you write something quick, like watashi wa sukoto desu, and show us so I can see what a gaijin writes like? Right now, I have like no paper in front of me. I know you said you're not very good, but do it for your fans. Give it a go. I don't prepare to have paper here. This isn't a writing lesson. This is answer your questions. I don't see how writing that down would answer your question. What a gaijin write like? I write like the stroke orders that I was taught. I hope you write the same stroke orders. Anyway, let's move on. I keep thinking my son's gonna run out of the back there and say, "What's up, Dad?" Okay, Travis says, you said that the only pros to being a citizen were voting and a little bit more of a pension. So I was wondering, would you still get a pension from Japan without being a citizen? Yes, you will. Does Japan have a 401k type deal? Not that I know of. And assuming social insecurity exists. I correct, you bastard. Social insecurity, I'm guessing what he tried to write was social security still exists. By the time you retire in Japan, would you still get it? Hey guys, just so you know, I know this is weird and I don't think I understood this totally myself. Social security is pension. They just call it pension in Japan. Okay, we don't have social security because we don't have social security cards. Okay, social security is purely like America. Barbara said, what's your favorite sweet snack? Oh, I like manju. We've talked about this before. And why don't they have ovens and dryers in Japan? They do have ovens and dryers in Japan. They're just not common. Don't people bake cookies? Yes, they do bake cookies. We've got, like our microwaves double as convectional ovens, so we can bake cookies. It doesn't take a massive tray to do that. Oh my god, my cat's meowing, my kid's talking, I can barely hear myself. I'm trying to finish this. Min says, hi Scott, I've seen a video where you went to downtown Osaka / Namba. Well, Namba is downtown Osaka. And I was wondering if it's possible to go to Dotonbori. Well, that's right next to Namba, so yes. Dotonbori River, that's in Dotonbori, in Shinsaibashi, yes. If you look at where these places are on a map, you will think possibly that is the dumbest question ever. That's like... how can I make a picture of that? Oh man. Okay, so like this is Namba, right? Right next to it. I mean, literally, we're talking like you walk 5 feet and you're into Dotonbori. You can. Okay, so let me explain something here. Asking if you can go to all those places is like being in the French Quarter and saying, "Can I go to all the parts of the French Quarter?" It's like, yeah, you can walk in the circle and go all the way around the French Quarter. That's I mean, they're so close to each other, it's ridiculous. Like, it's so easy to get to. You can literally see each place from all the different places you've just mentioned. They're literally like 500 meters apart. Zane said, Do you still feel your style of art is evolving? Yes, it's always evolving. If you're drawing all the time, you're always evolving. How has living in Japan influenced it? I've talked about this before. Dragons and fish. I practice them a lot. I've gotten better. Also, what are children's books like there? They have their own stories, of course. You might want to check out Momotaro, Kintaro. Those stories are famous here. Obviously, the princess that was from the bamboo, that's the famous one here. Altair and what's her name? Vega is the most recent one with Tanabata, which is a holiday we just celebrated. And you can check out a lot of the same books that are in America, such as The Hungry Caterpillar, Goodnight Moon, etc., etc. All right, let's move on here. My son's asking me to do some stuff, so I gotta hurry up and finish this. Okay, I'll look at the bake in just a second. Okay, Kenny, okay, bake. All right. He really likes monsters on the TV, so I like monsters too. I think he's a chip off the shoulder. Let's see. Chip off the shoulder, chip off the old block. Alright, Scott. Eric says, Scott, as someone who isn't huge on fish but will eat it, what are some dishes you could recommend to extend your taste for it until you like it better? Fish, and more fish? Sashimi, sushi? I don't know. What's like one of the easiest fish? Tilapia. They serve a Japanese version of tilapia that's super delicious. Maybe start with that. Tilapia is super easy to eat. Jesse says, when is the summer horror stories video going to be out? Oh, soon. You just wait. Actually, you know what? I have 4 days off coming up. I didn't even realize that until today. I need to make that video. Stephanie says, Scott, I've been curious about this for a while. How are girls with short hair perceived in Japan? They actually have a katakana word for it. Shorta hair. The short hair pixie cuts are super popular here. Are you kidding? Japanese girls are knockouts with those. I've almost always seen long hair or shoulder length hair, but never pixie cut short. Well, you've never been to Japan. There's a lot of pixie cuts. Would having short hair make a girl seem unprofessional or immature? Not in the slightest. Let me tell you, there's quite a few Grabia idols, talento, who rock the pixie cut. And let me tell you, Japanese girls with their thin frames do awesome with those. Alright guys, I have to shut this down and go take care of some kids. One's hungry and one wants me to go look at a monster on the TV. Until next time, I'm Unrested. This is JFAQ. So happy I got this done today. Yatta! Ganbarimashita!